When I hear death, the first thing that comes to my mind is you're gone. Your life is over, game over.
It started to freak me out because I noticed I was getting a lot more distant to a lot of people.
A lot of people try to stay away from you because they think that you might have a disease that could be given to them.
We all knew that COVID was going to really impact our kids, but there are many things that we didn't consider for them. One of the implications of how COVID has impacted our kids has really been in the rise in depression, anxiety, and scariest of all, suicide rates. Whereas we won't know yet what's the final tally of percentage increase in suicide completions or completed in this country. One of the things we have known and has been published recently is how some counties across the country have even had to open their doors up to full face-to-face because they've already reached some of their maxes in terms of suicide rates. That's alarming. That's alarming to think that we do not understand how severe this really does impact children, how much they take this to heart, how much they are affected by parents losing jobs, caretaking roles, lack of contact with other students, their friends, their sense of who they are has been kind of taken by being at home or being isolated or being unable to participate as they normally would.
At first, it didn't seem like it was going to be that big of a deal.
When I saw people wearing masks, I thought it was pretty weird because I've never seen it before.
I thought to myself, this is big, I need to be careful on what I'm doing, I need to wash my hands seriously and not joke around.
You miss out on a lot of things, and it started to freak me out because I noticed I was getting a lot more distant to a lot of people I knew that year.
My friends, they wouldn't go anywhere, so it was kind of sad because we weren't allowed to play with them or be with them.
In the past year, a lot of people try to stay away from you because they think that you might have a disease that could be given to them.
Over the summer, it started to get harder because I was feeling really down, I think, about myself.
I just thought that I really don't want to die. I get really scared and I'm way too young for that.
We really didn't consider the psychological, the emotional, and the social implications that all of this has had and how interwoven they really are to one another.
To be that long without face-to-face instruction and then to come back to the scenarios that you see in most public schools where they're in masks for almost 6 hours a day, then being told that your child may have been exposed to a child who may have been exposed to COVID and now you have to go home and isolate for 2 weeks, which is very common. It happens multiple times weekly in the public school system.
People, I feel like, are a lot more prone to be less social and to not go out. And if they have a legitimate reason, they have a legitimate reason. But I mean, it's almost created like it's too exhausting to try and plan something, so it's better to just not do it at all.
I really missed our freedom that we had because now there's a lot of rules and everything and it's just too much for me to handle. It's too much, I cannot really keep up with it.
And I know I was getting more tense as the summer went on because it was more like, are we ever going to get to go back to school this year? And am I going to get to have a summer at all and hang out with friends? I know on my birthday, only 2 of my friends could get their parents to agree to them to hang out with me socially distant.
The brain of a teenager looks identical to the brain of an adult. But the frontal lobes are not fully connected yet. The part of the brain that says, is this a good idea? What is the consequence of this action? It's not like they don't have a frontal lobe or can't use it, but they're going to access it more slowly. The brain's white matter enables nerve signals to flow freely between different parts of the brain. In teenagers, the part that governs judgment is the last to be fully connected. It doesn't matter how smart teens are or how well they score on their ACT or SAT, because good judgment isn't something they can excel in, at least not yet. Research has shown that the rational part of a teen's brain is not fully developed, and it won't be until the age of 25. And this is why when a teen is experiencing an overwhelming emotional input, they can't really recall later what they were thinking because they weren't thinking as much as they were feeling.
Even personally, how it's affected my family is my daughter. She's a child that's very much interactive, takes a lot of pride in her school and in her activities and in her friendships and her relationships. To have her really make that switch when COVID hit at first, to see that change, that physical, emotional, psychological change was really startling. You learn with a teen pretty quickly, you can't sugarcoat things. As much as we as natural parents want to protect and insulate our children from the stresses of the world, we had to talk a lot about risk and what things are okay to take risks on, which are not. And seeing that her needs, we had to kind of attend to those specifically. Something that was tailored to her that was very different from many of her friends, what we had to do, because her mental health was just as important as her physical health to us.
I know that over the summer it made me feel tense and like angry, kind of. I stayed inside with just my family, and it gets difficult to be around the same people all the time, even if you love them.
My grandparents in New York, I miss them because we moved here to Florida 5 years ago, and I've only seen them twice in that time. We call them and stuff, but it's not the same. They're by themselves right now in their apartment. I just don't want anything bad to happen to them.
When I hear death, the first thing that comes to my mind is you're gone. Your life is over, game over.
OCD-like behavior, obsessive compulsive disorder, where excessive hand washing and fear of germs has really taken a hold and has had rise. To have my daughter kind of confide in me that one of her friends struggles with OCD, and that sounds like it's a family trait, how complicated all of this has made it even worse. It's very sad, it creates quite a lot of isolation for the child and the family, and increases that sense of there's danger everywhere, especially when it comes to germs. Now that we have it tagged to something of a pandemic nature, something that really has the potential to kill and hurt, it really took that message home and really made it realize that things that we never realized before, like OCD, could actually get a lot worse.
With everything that's happening now, the restrictions, the different protocols for when somebody is exposed to COVID, students are having to find ways to cope with things that they probably never dreamed of before, never thought would happen in their lifetime. We all are.
I started playing soccer since I was 3 years old. Then COVID hit, and that was a big change for me, honestly. Now I had to train at my house. I had to buy some equipment, and me lonely.
I used to play soccer games a lot, like every weekend. But now it's like once every 2-3 weeks because they don't want us like playing together or like touching each other. It makes us feel kind of weird because we would used to play with each other and like play, like even tag. Now you can't really play that because you don't want to touch each other. You'd probably be a little afraid or insecure about it.
One of my daughter's best friends from childhood, she was adopted by a single mother, a little bit of an older parent. And when COVID really hit, how legitimate the fear was for her that she could potentially lose her mother. Her mother was at risk, her only parent at risk. So pretty much it went from everything, this child was super involved in sports and activities, to having to like really worry.
I think the length of time has really taken its toll. I think kids can do anything for a little while, but after a while, it starts to grind on them. That human touch that we all want, just to be able to hold somebody's hand, pat their back, or give them a hug. I don't know how resilient kids are going to be to keep having that happen and be able to still succeed academically.
After presenting the Why I Count program in schools for many years now, the most overwhelming part for me is to see how kids and teens, and I should even say adults today, are hungry to hear something positive about themselves. There's such a crisis and a rub of identity. It's almost overwhelming to witness. And social media is a big part of it because it could be used for the good, obviously, but it's often being used to fuel emotion, spread rumors, lies, and the kids have to live up to something that isn't real.
Patience, understanding, and empathy need to be the number one things that we're doing as educators.
I think a lot of gratitude is important in times like these, that today may not be good, but that doesn't mean in a couple of hours it'll be better. So when we've had some of our difficult conversations that are kind of sad and depressing, I will often go up to my daughter's room to say, "You okay? What'd you think about what we talked about?" And we always kind of have to just validate and be there and be patient.
I understand for people who have obviously lost family members, it's hard. It's difficult to see a positive side, but the truth is, at least for a lot of kids my age, or people in general, is we all had to grow up a lot faster, and to not make us feel so emotionally dependent on other people to make us feel complete.
Children are watching. They're watching how the parent will react to a bad situation. And the way a parent will overcome adversity is what's going to help the kid develop the rational part of his brain. So the parent is really the most important role model a child can have.
I'm grateful that my parents are here, there to support me, and also my sister.
So when I first saw masks, I wasn't afraid because my parents weren't afraid, because they know that Jesus is with them.
What do we pull away from? I think that's what I always try to instill in my kid. Okay, what are going to be, this stinks, but what can we take from it? What can be positive from this? How can we turn those lemons into lemonade? Let's try to squeeze it.
Let's just repeat that. You are awesome. I can't hear you. You are awesome.
Whoa, okay, you believe it.